All right. Hello, everyone, and I hope the volume is okay for for me. We have a first session with Sagnik, and I met Sagnik a few years ago. As you know, Plato is a mentorship platform for engineering leaders. And Sagnik actually happened to apply to become a mentor in the platform. When I saw that, I was really impressed on how such a busy leader managing almost 1,500 engineers would be able to spend the time to mentor other engineering leaders outside of his company. So I told to myself that I had to talk to Sagnik myself and figure out what has been your motivation to apply as a mentor, Sagnik. And then we had this incredible lunch, and a few highlights were that you told me that you owe your success to incredible mentors. You told me about how much important it is to go outside of your company and have a diversity of thoughts to see other patterns. And one also, when I ask you the one thing that keep you up at night, the one thing you told me is about how can you grow more efficiently? How can you have and grow in this environment with less resources? And I thought it would be an incredible topic to share with many other engineering leaders today. They are facing a lack of resources, diminishing resources. So you have to be actually doing more with less, with more precision and more efficiency. So that is the topic for today. Sagnik, thank you again for being with us today. Without further ado, the mic is yours. Thank you, Sagnik.
Well, thank you so much, Kwong. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sagnik. I'm the CTO and President of Technology at Okta. Prior to that, I was there in Google for 15 plus years. I'm here to talk about more money, more problems. I have a few slides, so let me present that. Can people see it? Hopefully they can. Great. So it's interesting that, Plato's about mentorship, because the inspiration for this talk and this topic comes from a very good mentor of mine, someone I've known and worked with for many, many years. Many years ago, when I'd just become a tech lead, I was talking to this person and I asked him what was the most productive phase of their career. And this is someone who was extremely successful by that time. And they mentioned that one of the most successful phases of their career was when they had started a small company. They were less than 20 people. And he mentioned that they were just getting so much done. They were churning out features like every few weeks. They were getting so much done. The quality of code, the quality of people, everything was really good. And he mentioned that that's probably the most fun and productive phase of his otherwise what is definitely a very, very successful career. Now, I knew this person and I knew that this particular company didn't work out. So I asked him, given what you're saying, what happened? And his answer was very interesting. He said, we failed because we became successful, which was quite interesting and ironic. And on probing further, he said that everything was going well till they became successful. And as they became successful, a lot of unknown new problems happened. And the company quickly moved from building and being productive to a reactive mode where they were just dealing with problems. And it became less fun. They were getting less done. There was a lot of pressure. And before they knew it, they had to kind of fold. It was an interesting conversation that since then has resonated with me on multiple fronts in 10 plus teams and different companies and very different setups. I have seen that as one becomes successful, a common set of problems start appearing. And that's the inspiration of this talk. More money being a proxy for growth. It could be more customers. It could be more success, more problems. And the hope is getting the conversation going, hopefully sharing a few insights, and let's see where it goes from here. So when I say more money, more problems, again, based on the many teams that I'm talking about, I see these three phases in the journey of a team, a company, a product. That phase one is when a lot's getting done. The green line here is growth, and the red line here is problems. Think of it that way. Very fascinating graph. Uh, so initially, there are few problems. Growth far outpaces problems. You're just getting stuff done. At some point, you reach phase two, when the problems start building up, but you're still going, your problems and growth are going hand in hand. And we still, in our minds, you're like, this is expected. As we are growing, we see more problems. And then phase three happens when the problems start outpacing growth. A lot more of your time starts getting spent in dealing with these problems. And my hope is in this audience right now, we probably have people from each of these phases. And for folks who are in or are in phase three or have been in phase three, it's a great time for all of us to share some of the experiences. People who are in phase one and phase two and have not seen phase three know that this is coming. Very likely that this is coming, and being proactive and getting on top of things before they become a big problem is a good place. So how do these problems manifest? So these problems appear, like, what do I mean by problems? They appear in two flavors. One, you often see bad things happening. So, a lot more outages, your customer bugs and issues start building up. As you go more upmarket, like enterprise strategic customers, their issues start being more unique. They are a lot more often louder with their issues. Like, they want that dedicated love and attention. Bad press can happen. Like, as you grow successful, you're scrutinized a lot more carefully. So anything you mess up, you start showing up in places where it's hard to recover from. Lower customer satisfaction. These are bad things, and the volume of these bad things, and there are many more that can happen, start growing. Another flavor is things just seem like they are slowing down. Features take longer. Your product and go-to-market teams start complaining that, hey, like, what happened? Like, our customers want like 10 things done. You could get 10 things done with like 20 people earlier. Now I've given you like 100 more headcount, and we're just producing like 5 features. Developers start complaining. You start seeing, like, every team company has a phase where your old time developers are like, and everything's down to a screeching halt. And an interesting thing that I've often seen is people try to then trade one of these problems for the other. When bad things start happening, they slow things down further to prevent bad things from happening. Or when things are slowing down, they feel the way to go is be more risk prone. And I genuinely believe that best of both worlds can be achieved, because at the end of the day, the two are very strongly related to each other. So for the rest of the talk, what I'll do is, again, one of my mentors told me that when you're talking to an audience, it's important to tell them how much you'll bore them. So I won't bore you for too long. I will talk about 4 more things from here. These are 4 things that I've seen, as I mentioned, over the span of like almost like 15, 16 years across many teams that I have directly dealt with, or talking to many friends, many mentors. These are 4 things I wish I had known earlier. And I wish like every team knew that these are likely to be coming. By no means are these exhaustive. By no means are these 100% guaranteed to happen for you. I've chosen 4 that I think happen more often than not. But again, I just want to qualify that there are cultural things, there are structural things which are also very important that shows up a lot. I have focused for this talk on 4 technical things that show up a lot, just to get the conversation going, and then we'll have time for Q&A. Would love to share thoughts, and hear from others as well. So what are the 4 things we'll talk about? In case you zone out right after this, we'll talk about your systems needing rewriting, the ability to play to your core strengths, preparing for bad things and automating best practices, and actively monitoring developer experiences and velocity. So if you completely zone out, these are 4 things you should care about. If you're still with me, I'll dive into each one of these a little more. So your systems will need rewriting. Every successful team, every successful company, every successful product builds on something that works. And that automatically gives this sense of confidence that this thing worked very well. How can this ever require any kind of rewriting? How can this require any kind of replacement? The fact is, every single system will outlive itself at some point. The sooner you accept this, the better. I have, as I mentioned, like I've been doing software development for like 20 plus years. Every time something gets built, I somehow have to remind myself that this time is no different. Like you learn from your experiences from the past, which makes you more confident over time. The reality is the technology world is changing. Problems are changing, customers are changing, competition is changing. So anything you build will become obsolete. The sooner you know and do something about it, the better. So it's very important to remember you're neither perfect nor unique. Whatever you're building will at some point look obsolete. Just accept it. The next thing I often hear is like, yes, I agree that's the case, but now's not a good time. Like, if I knew what I know now 2 years back, I would have done something about it. But right now we have so many customers. Like I have 7 features. You heard the product team just said we are going slow. I can't rewrite the system. And then you talk to them 2 years from then, they're like, the product team is saying now you're only producing 2 features every 6 months instead of 4. Like I wish like I had started my rewrite 2 years back. So I think it's important to know the best time was 2 years back. The second best time is now. There'll never be a better time than now. So if you're in a position where you feel this is long overdue, then things will only get worse. So try to do something about that. Even if you feel like now is not a good time, keep in mind that things will get worse and start preparing for it going forward. This one, again, I learned from a mentor, and it's been a critical part of my own software development process over the years. It's this notion of building for deprecation. Even when you accept that every system will be replaced, we have this confidence that what we are building now is so good that that will somehow be different. So every pain we went through to replace the last system, we make the new system go through the exact same thing when it's time for the deprecation. So if you assume that anything you're building now will someday get thrown out, you will actually incorporate in your design the ability to replace it better. This could be everything from creating APIs which allow for backward compatibility, not having hard dependencies with data, don't have such stateful systems that can't be swapped out. All sorts of things like this. If you just assume that even though you're building a brand new system now, it's going to be great, or sometimes you don't build a brand new system, you start replacing parts of your existing system with newer parts. Keep in mind, every single part, every single system will go through the same fate themselves. So if you incorporate little tools that make the next deprecation and migration easier, you will build systems very differently. So everything, as I mentioned, from data migration, statefulness, APIs you build, backward compatibility, your release process where you don't have strict dependencies. So build for deprecation is a good thing to keep in mind. And then the final thing, be proactive. Don't wait for things to become urgent. So many people, myself included, we often enter a stage where we are like, now it's too late. This should have happened earlier. I wish we had done something about this earlier. Know this is coming and start preparing in advance for it. So the sooner you prepare, so even if things are going great right now, start asking yourself the questions. What's starting to look a little obsolete? Which thing is likely to outgrow itself soon? Which new technology is emerging, which had I known about a year back, my systems would have looked fundamentally different. So be proactive so you don't have to do a huge lift, but can make incremental lifts to replace things. So this is around your systems needing rewriting. And again, these are things I wish I had known earlier. And these are also things I wish even though I'm presenting this now, I forget. Like the confidence often comes in and you feel like this time is different. So I just wanted to share. Again, by no means saying everyone will go through, but a lot of people do go through this. Next, we have what I call try to play to your core strengths. As teams, products, companies grow, I often ask them the question, what percentage of your time is going into areas that you are truly the leader, either in terms of thought, execution? What is your core strength? A friend of mine calls this your core competency versus your peripheral and accompanying competency. As teams grow, you'll see an increasing amount of your bandwidth goes in dealing with things that everyone else is dealing with, and now you feel like you have to deal with it too. These could range anything like your CI/CD pipelines, your developer workflows. Mentorship is a great example. Identity systems. There are experts in many companies who do things well. When you're building something, your expectation is people will use you for things that you do best. I think it's important to use that same philosophy and leverage others. There are people who know data better than a company that's trying to build a consumer product. And yes, when you start, like you're probably building a rudimentary data system, at some point, falling back to experts is super helpful and playing to your strengths. So if you find out that over time, I ask all my teams to track what percentage of their time or resources is going in things that only we do or we think is truly unique about us. And you'll see in the early stages of a team, that percentage is closer to 70-80. And fast forward a few years, you'll see probably 20% of your resources are going in doing things that only you are differentiating around. The rest is just doing things that every other company is dealing with. So like, again, I mentioned, like you could be building your own payment system. Consider, should you? Your own like data pipeline, should you? Your own identity systems, your own mentorship network. Ask yourself these questions. When you tell people this, you hear some counter arguments. And these are the four most common ones that I hear. Cost effectiveness. People are like, well, I know others do this, but I do it more efficiently. It's often the case that yes, that is true in the early days of a company or team. But as things start scaling, people don't track costs. They still remember that at some point, we spoke to someone and we were less expensive, and they stick to it. So evaluate your cost all the time. Also, people are often very generous towards themselves when they're measuring cost effectiveness. You might just be looking at resource cost and not at cost of engineers. You might not be looking at opportunity cost. Like, if you were to put the same people in doing what you do best, what would happen? So evaluate cost effectiveness. Often when you hear this argument, dig in deeper because the delta might be lesser and in many cases actually cost beneficial over time to not do this. The second one, this one is the hardest to deal with, I often feel, is people are overinvested. You have people who build some of these peripheral systems, like someone in your company built the CI/CD pipeline. And now you realize like something is happening in the outside world and it's too late because like 4 people know how to run it and they built it, and every other solution that's discussed, they kind of override it. So get ahead of this. You think and you convince. And again, this goes back. We all think we are unique. In this amazing tech world of like thousands and thousands of amazing people, I keep reminding myself that I think most people are not unique. And again, the whole purpose of this slide is to focus on the part that you're truly unique in. So keep in mind that there's a whole ecosystem of focus, research, and development happening in some of these things which are not your core competency. So if you're thinking you're truly unique, the odds are that if there are people who are doing this as their sole focus, they probably know more about this than you. And the final thing, cost of migration. This goes back to the system rewrite aspect that I mentioned. People are like, yeah, this is true. I get it that this will be, but then there's some cost to migrating now. Again, we often see people are penny wise, pound foolish, but you think about cost just in one instance of time. Think about cost from a slightly longer term point of view. Think of all aspects of cost. And also keep in mind, if the best time was a year back, the next best time is now. So ask yourself, will I be having this exact same conversation of regret a year from now? So that's the second thing, is try to do what you do best and leverage others, whether it's experts, the ecosystem, other solutions, to see whether you can focus and do what you do best. The third thing is preparing for bad things. Again, this is something a mentor of mine told me, which I found super helpful. Don't just in the early days of every team company, there's a desire to feel, let's stop bad things from happening. We'll write perfect code. We'll be so diligent. Like our strength is going to be our discipline, our diligence. That's a great quality to have. But at some point, because of scale, bad things will just happen. And if you accept, like, again, that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to prevent bad things. All I want you to know is even with your best planning, best execution, bad things will happen. So it's a very different mindset if you build a system for prevention versus a system for detection and mitigation, which is the next point, that increasingly start focusing not just on detection, but also mitigation. If you're getting 20 problems right now and you deal with each problem in 10 minutes, and let's say we're talking about customer issues. So it's great that you deal with these in 10 minutes. Very soon, there'll be 200 of these happening. Even if you spend the same 10 minutes, it'll add up and a lot more people will get dragged into just problem solving. So don't just think about like, can I detect issues? How do you automatically recover from that? That's a big thing to keep in mind. I am surprised how many people, like when a company, team, project grows, how much focus gets into people manually intervening to solve problems. So focusing on easy mitigation, like how do you quickly unroll? How do you build red buttons where you press a button and you move from a bad state to a good state and then you debug it later? So focusing on mitigation is going to be super important. This is another one which is cultural, but I see this a lot, is a lot of teams and companies focus on experts, like these old timers who know everything. Like when this bad thing happens, you run these two scripts and then you like go to this flag and change it to this magic value and then magical things happen. It's great that your teams have amazing people with great domain knowledge. Don't have a culture where heroes are present, but not one where you depend on heroes. So it's an important thing to keep in mind. You want people who are amazing, but you shouldn't like rely completely on people who know everything. So don't rely on experts. Build your system and your mitigation so that a dummy can handle it. Like ask yourself the question, someone who's joined the team 3 weeks back knows very little. If they are given a problem, can they fix it? If you've built a system where they can quickly go in, map the problem to one of three kinds of problems, press two buttons, get to a better state, and then deal with what's next, that's the kind of world, that's the kind of system you want to build. The next one, again, like so much of what I'm sharing is things I've learned or heard from others. This one, again, a very good friend and mentor of mine used to talk about the dogs not barking. So this comes from a Sherlock Holmes story that's like where Sherlock Holmes asked the police officer, like, what do you think about the dog barking? And the officer says the dogs weren't barking. He says that's the thing to focus on. That meant that the culprit was someone the dog knew. Sometimes when bad things are not happening, really bad things are possibly happening. Again, if you go back to the first point, that at certain size and scale, bad things will happen, no matter how hard you try. So if you are not seeing bad things, if you're deploying a massive system rewrite and nothing happened, maybe your monitoring is broken. Maybe you're not getting the right signals. Maybe something, again, I don't want to say that if bad things are not happening, you should freak out, but you should question yourself because these slow bleeds are often really painful, where for years something bad starts building up. And eventually, when it reaches a size where you have to handle it, it's a lot more painful. So sometimes focus on the things that you're not seeing. I always, so let me do the next one as well. So these two things, I always push all my teams. I call this the 2x with half goal. Anything you're doing well, I call it scaling efficiency, scaling your excellence. Anything you're great at, and there's so many things you'll be great at, ask yourself, can I still be as great as I am or even better if 2x of these problems had to be dealt with? So let's take a specific one. Let's say you're dealing with escalations or code submits. You have 100 escalations you're dealing with in a month. Ask yourself, can I deal with 200 escalations, but only with half the people that I need right now? This, can you do 2x with only half the resources, forces you to think in a revolutionary manner as opposed to an evolutionary manner. The natural way of dealing with scale is often to throw more people and resources because you're assuming what you have is perfect. If you were to change these two parameters, you were to double your input, but also double your output, you will think very differently. So as you do that, you'll realize automation is your friend in almost everything. continuously ask yourself, what is it that I'm doing now that can and should be automated? So everything you're doing now, like even if it's fully automated, you run 4 scripts by pressing 4 buttons. Maybe you need to press only 1 button which runs those 4 scripts. Maybe most of the times you need 3 of those and occasionally you need 4. Maybe you have 2 buttons. Again, everything that you're doing, try to automate. And even when it's automated, ask yourself, how can I take it the next level, this 2x and half goal? And then the final thing is, as all these bad things are happening, the thing that often gets readily compromised on or forgotten is developer experience. Because we're like, our developers are great, they'll figure it out. So you're focusing on all the outbound things, and people lose focus of the internal things. And I think it's very important to track these. So the number one thing is to be quantitative. Keep tabs on your developer happiness. This is a topic of a lot of interest, and very quickly everyone gets pedantic. What's the perfect developer metric? There isn't one. So it's important to have something that you track directionally as opposed to having the perfect thing, but track it proactively. I'll tell you one that I use a lot. We ask all developers or a subset of developers to say, have things improved compared to the last 3 months? Just one simple question. And you quickly see that maybe 50% of your people feel like things have degraded, and 20% feel it's the same, 30% feel it's improved. Next time you do it, you feel 70% people are saying things have degraded. If that trend continues, dig in right away. By no means is that the perfect metric, but find your own metric. Some people use mean time for code deployment. Some people use like how long does a code submission take? All sorts of things, but track it and choose some metric. And over time you can iterate, but track it and be proactive about it. The second one is treat it as a feature. Developer satisfaction, developer happiness is given it's something very intrinsic. Oftentimes it's not treated with the same love. You prioritize product features which your product partners, your go-to-market partners, your marketing partners might care about. A lot of these people won't know or might not care about developer happiness. However, if you ignore it, at some point it becomes a massive problem. You'll slow down, you'll see much higher levels of attrition. So treat it as a feature. Treat it like in your list of projects, have something like launch feature X, improve developer satisfaction by 10%. Treat it as a feature. That way it gets the attention, love, and it gets the right focus. Like your partners need to know that as developers are happier and more productive, everything will improve. And then the final thing is it's very important to revisit your assumptions. Everything you've assumed and done might be true. The IDE you're using, the build system. I'll give an example of something I've seen many people deal with. Early days of development, you probably run your entire test suite all the time. As your project, team, company grows, at some point it'll be prohibitively expensive, but you might still be going with that assumption that all tests run all the time. You might have to revisit that for your scale and size. So anything that you've assumed is a given for developers, it's important to question both by getting feedback from developers and seeing is now the time to change those. So again, thank you so much for having me. I wanted to at least share these 4 that I wish I both see happen a lot, and I wish I had known earlier or continuously remind myself. The purpose is to get the conversation going. Always leverage people around you. I still talk to so many people just to see what are the new problems they are facing, how they are dealing with these things. Great ideas come both from within your network, but also outside your network. So please reach out. And thank you so much again. Hopefully this was at least of some value. But if not, let's get the discussion moving. Questions, thoughts? I see someone saying, is there a QR code? No, it's something my wife got from Egypt. I think it's a papyrus.
Nice. So thank you, Sagnik. We have a couple of questions. So the first one is from Puneet. What are the signs to look for to determine the time to rewriting a system?
Again, it goes back to the last thing I mentioned around, I have found it helpful, by no means saying that's the only way, to continuously gather signals and see when the signals, like I found directional signals to be very helpful. So a good thing is both ask your developers, but also ask your cross-functional partners how efficient they think you are. And you'll start seeing early signals. Your product team will, like you'll see, like most of them start feeling like things are starting to go slow. So identify a few metrics. I think a good heuristic to use is for every 100 people, no more than 3 metrics, because otherwise there'll be too many metrics, they'll interplay with each other. But choose some metric, and then when you see it starting to dip either enough or faster, take it seriously.
Awesome. I love that, involving your team. So the next one is from me. Actually, I didn't know it would have so much a vote. But basically, you spent 15 years at Google before joining Okta. So I suspect that at Google you have this strong culture of build instead of buy. So you had a whole slide about that. So how did you change your mindset when you joined Okta?
So one of the reasons I actually left, I loved Google. Google is amazing. One of the reasons I left, though, is I noticed that this build culture was starting to become somewhat unique to Google and maybe a handful of other companies. And I felt in many ways I was functioning in a world which is increasingly different from what I call commoditized computing. Like when you build software right now, you seldom build from scratch. You put many available pieces together. That's the way like the broader software development ecosystem is happening. So one of my reasons for trying something new was to make sure I also realized Google was in a unique position, and that's why I think a handful of company were at Google's size and scale. Those small cost or performance efficiencies start like matter a lot more. Like if you're making, like if you have 100 customers and I say like, your CI/CD pipeline will give you maybe a 1% cost advantage now. Over time, that will fade out. If you're a $1 trillion company, like the 1% add up. So I think they also both had scale and a size of people where they can afford to build a net new database. That's not the liberty most of us have outside. We're like, let's build my new relational database. Let's build my new like stream processing system. So I moved knowing that this is where the most of the world is going. There are instances like Google and a few other companies where that might make sense, but the outside world is very different. And I think like I ask everyone to focus on their strengths because that's more efficient.
Yeah, I was having a lunch yesterday with a former director of engineering at Facebook, and they built their own care ladder system. They built their own performance management system. And I asked him, why did you do that? And because we have the resources, we have the engineers to do that. So yeah. The next one is from Marwan. How do you find the right balance between rewriting and working on new features? Any rule of thumb?
I think it's nice to have explicit conversations. So I think any engineering team has like, I've seen people either split it into 3 or 4 buckets. So one is organic development. So these are things where you're building features. The second is KTLO, keep the lights on. So these are reactive things you're doing. 3 is bets for the future. And 4 is this bucket of other. So other might be things like compliance, etc., that you have to do. That's not feature. That's not like keeping the lights on, but like you're expected to do. Oftentimes, some people take that other bucket and bundle it under keep the lights on. So let's simplify this. Imagine there are these 3 buckets: feature or growth focus, keep the lights on, and investment in the future. I think it's very important to have the conversation with your management and stakeholders on what's the investment mix around these. Typically, a good team of a certain functioning size, feature development is anything between 50 to 60. Your keep the lights on is somewhere between 15 to 25. And your bets for the future is something between 10, 15, 20. That's the range. If any of these become like oftentimes, like if you're not investing anything into the future, then you're being myopic. You're probably going to get into some mode where you're like, okay, this thing is going to blow up. So once you have that active conversation, your product teams directly influence that first 50, 60% bucket, that bucket. So there you're like, okay, if you have 100 people, imagine 60 people are up for product development. 15 is for future investment. Use that 15 for whether it's like the next set of technology you're experimenting with or rewrites. But I think having that explicit conversation and investment framework sets the right tone. And you can revisit these numbers over time. Like you'll see oftentimes what happens is when you up feature development percentage, debt starts building up. So then you see these cycles when like feature development slows down and keep the lights on become bigger. But actively having those buckets and deciding how to fund it is very helpful.
Yep. I think we have time for one more question. Sagnik, there are so many questions now. I'd love to have another conversation with you to answer those. But basically, those are two similar questions from Puneet and Vladimir. Puneet is asking how to pitch the importance of developer experience to other business units. And Vladimir is asking how would you convince your product and business partner that it's time to rewrite instead of building new features? So basically, how you convince your business partners that it's time to rewrite or to focus on developer experience.
Right. So the first thing is it's going to be hard. So let's just accept it is hard, which is where that the previous answer of investment mix sometimes comes handy. Like one way of dealing with it is like, hey, 20% of my resources, I know I need to use it. Trust me, what I do with it, you can influence that number 20 to be 15 or 25. But post that, like whether I invested in developer happiness or system rewrite, trust me, I'm doing the right thing. So I've seen some leaders, and I've had to do this sometimes, where you just can't convince. So you're like, okay, you are doing things that I might not fully get, but I get that it's important for your function. So you've given me 20% of my resources that I just know how to handle. The second is see if you can tie it to something. So for example, can you tie it back to something they care about? Good example, like imagine you're investing in building more data functionality. Say, hey, there are these 3 features that we can't do right now. If you allow me to invest now, next year we can do it and we can do it a lot cheaper. So it's a little harder, but see if like by looking ahead, you can map it to something they care about. Same thing with developer velocity. We've often seen that, hey, last year, like I show them directional numbers. Last year, we shipped N features with K people. This year, look at the productivity, it's gone down. So if you just trust these numbers, you're seeing we are becoming slower and you're complaining about features not going out. So let me take this seriously so I can at least bring it up to last year's numbers. So while they might not know what developer project you'll do, they look at the numbers and they're like, oh, clearly like the productivity has gone down. So that's something I care about at a macro level, at an aggregated level. So those are some things I've seen get used.
Sagnik, thank you so much. We're out of time and we have tons of other questions, so we'll see how we can still answer them. It's incredible how much you learn thanks to your mentors. You've been seeing that a couple of times in your presentation. And I'm so glad to hear that it really increased the excitement for the mission that we have. Sagnik, thank you so much again. Thank you, everyone, for all your questions and for your time.
Thank you so much, Kwong. Thank you so much, everyone. Absolute pleasure and honor to be here. Have a great rest of the event. Thank you so much.